begin with a new consideration of the Chinese bourgeoisie on the eve of the 1911 revolution. Mainland scholars have arrived after 30 years of research, that is starting in 1979, at a much more nuanced and complex presentation of Chinese social conditions on the eve of the 1911 revolution. A wealth of studies has appeared documenting the state connection of the new style merchants and the civic functions of merchant associations. A new picture has emerged in which gentry constitutionalists, enlightened officials, and new style militarists, trained in Japan again, have all made their contributions, along with the revolutionaries, to the fall of the Qing and the rise of the Republic. What that meant was that even though Sun Yat-sen and his revolutionaries might have been the people who received the credit for making the revolution, they were certainly not the principal parties shaping the pre-revolutionary conditions. So the key elements of this new interpretation would include the following. First, intellectual awakening takes the place of class consciousness or class struggle as the driving force of historical change in Chinese modernity. Second, the legacy of the revolution no longer rests with the way it shows how a revolution was to be made. It rests instead with the Republican ideals and institutions it managed to put in place. In other words, it's not so much about the destruction of the old. It's much more important to figure out what the 1911 revolution had put in place in terms of its contribution to the new China. Third, the revolution, with its uprising, was hardly, as conventionally claimed, an epoch-making event, ushering a brand new China. Well before 1911, significant changes were already in place, facilitating the transformation of China from a traditional empire to a modern nation-state. Within that context, the Wuchang Uprising had pushed to the forefront the role of the militarists at the expense of the constitutionalists. During the revolution, members of the new army used force to gain what they had wanted. They also did so at the expense of the constitutional reformers and their choice of legislative means to achieve comparable goals. The Wuchang revolutionaries had played a decisive role facilitating the downfall of the Qing. They had offered a quick solution to China's political conundrum of the early 20th century, when power holders impeded political changes. They had also opened up the difficult question of whether a quick solution was always a good solution, especially when confronting the primary historical challenges facing China in those days. Now, the above is a summary of my reading of the latest or the current crop of historical scholarship produced in China. So if we elaborate on that a little bit, Chinese historians today would like to put the emphasis about the 1911 revolution on the positive side. They would like to talk about how a major intellectual awakening took place around the turn of the 20th century. This intellectual awakening paved the way for the imagination of a new Chinese nation state. An abundance of media articles and printed materials gave evidence to this awakening among young, educated Chinese people sojourning in Japan, in Southeast Asia, in America, and elsewhere. Secondly, the construction of a constitutional republican state required the building of a representative system. Early Republican efforts to do so ended up in failure because the delegates to the assembly were contentious and the new system became mired in old mentality or old rivalry. The new republic also involved a reorganization of the central government, a new arrangement or administrative hierarchy that adjusted the relationships between the center and the locale. The Republican government, even under the days of Deng Shikai, made new laws and recruited new government officials. A couple of decades later, this new republic, under Sun Yat-sen's successor Chiang Kai-shek, was experimenting with local elections involving multiple political parties, and doing so even during wartime. Sun Yat-sen's vision also guided the drafting of a new constitution of the Republic of China. This constitution, incidentally, was to lay the foundation of Taiwan's thorough democratic transformation by the end of the 20th century. Now, so, ultimately, this 1911 revolution, as its centennial approaches, is to be celebrated for its constructive rather than destructive energy. And let me emphasize one more time, this is not my research. I am merely reporting to you my synoptic reading of the most recent interpretive thesis advanced not even by scholars based on Taiwan. These are synoptic theses advanced by scholars based in the People's Republic of China. So, and then I would also add this note that the government in Beijing, by and large, the Central Party, the propaganda department of the Central Party, by and large, favor this idea about de-revolutionizing the 1911 revolution. So, what are we to say about all of this? That is, given the way that a new wave of historical interpretation has emerged in today's China about this founding moment of the Chinese Republic.